Do you ever have those mornings where you wake up, open your eyes, and just instantly, before your feet even touch the floor, you just feel the crushing weight of everything you have to do?
Oh, the immediate heavy thoughts. Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
your brain completely skips the whole waking up gracefully part. It just drops this anvil of stress and to-do lists and, I don't know, existential dread right onto your chest.
It's a very specific kind of exhaustion.
It really is. Or maybe you find yourself just constantly exhausted by a world that seems to demand this relentless, unending rhythm of productivity from you.
Which is pretty much everyone these days.
Exactly. So if you are nodding your head right now, whether you're commuting to work or prepping for a big meeting or just trying to find a rare moment of peace in your day, you are exactly where you need to be. Welcome to today's deep dive.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. Today, we are going on a very lyrical, highly emotional, and deeply thematic exploration. We've pulled together 3 really fascinating transcript excerpts from a YouTube channel called B.I.R.D.Y Music. And we're going to treat these tracks exactly like what they are, which is modern poetry.
It really is modern poetry, and what makes this particular collection of sources so compelling for us to look at is the sheer emotional range here. I mean, we are spanning the entire spectrum of the human experience.
Yeah, the contrast is wild.
Right, because the sources we have, they range from these incredibly gentle ambient morning affirmations that are just designed to hold space for you, all the way to these really intense visceral verses about trauma and panic and sheer survival.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. We're looking at words that are meant to be felt in the body just as much as they are understood by the mind.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really appreciate the journey these 3 pieces take us on, we have to look at that contrast between them. We have 3 distinct videos. There's Breathe into the Day, then Chaos to Cycle, and finally the incredibly heavy Chest Full of Thunder.
That last one is a lot.
It really is. And as we analyze these lyrics, I really want you, the listener, to think about your own internal monologue. Let's start right at the beginning of the day. Our first source is this highly ambient track titled Breathe into the Day, Grounding for Early Morning Presence.
A great place to start.
Yeah, and the lyrics here are incredibly sparse. The transcript basically gives us these ethereal sounds and then this one piercingly clear phrase that just says, washing over the heavy thought.
And that simplicity is entirely by design. I mean, in a track meant for early morning grounding, a barrage of complex lyrics would completely defeat the purpose.
It would just be more noise.
Exactly. Psychologically speaking, what this track is trying to do is establish a necessary baseline of presence by utilizing what we call a liminal space.
A liminal space, like a threshold or a waiting area.
Right, yeah. In this case, it's the psychological threshold between being asleep and being fully awake. It is a highly vulnerable state.
Oh, for sure.
Because before you can confront the chaos of the world, the emails, the demands, the news, there must be a moment of grounding. If you rush that transition, your brain immediately perceives a threat.
And your cortisol levels just spike.
Exactly. So when the source talks about washing over the heavy thought, it's offering a cognitive reset in that liminal space. It's not fighting the mental static.
Right.
It's not analyzing the morning dread. It's just letting something else wash over it, preserving that threshold for just a moment longer.
That makes so much sense. I know for me, if I grab my phone and check my email before I've even had my coffee, my nervous system basically thinks I'm being chased by a bear for the rest of the day.
That's the perfect way to describe it.
We literally invite the cognitive clutter in for breakfast.
Yeah.
But this track is creating a sonic and lyrical barrier, basically saying, wait, just wash over it first.
Precisely. That baseline of presence is critical because if you don't establish it, if you don't actively protect that morning threshold, you are immediately swept away by the demands of the environment around you. You just step right into the machinery.
And those demands are exactly what that second track is pushing back against.
Yeah.
It completely pivots from that morning quiet into this really stark critique of modern life.
It's a sharp turn.
It is. The track is called Chaos to Cycle, neuro-affirming lo-fi ambient for inner strength and calm. And the lyrics give us this line: the world demands a constant home, a rhythmic output never done.
Rhythmic output never done. Yeah.
But let's play devil's advocate here for a second, because a rhythmic output is kind of how society functions, right? I mean, we have jobs, we have bills to pay, we have responsibilities. Isn't telling people to step away from that output a bit idealistic?
What's fascinating here is how the track frames this pushback. It specifically uses the phrase neuroaffirming spaces in its title.
Yeah.
When the track uses the term neuroaffirming, it's speaking directly to people whose brains might work a little differently, perhaps dealing with ADHD, autism, or sensory processing differences.
Right, right.
A neuroaffirming approach inherently shifts away from the idea that these variations are deficits or, broken machines that need to be cured or forced into a neurotypical mold. It validates them as natural human variations.
So it's challenging the baseline of what's considered normal productivity.
Exactly. We live in a society that measures human worth almost exclusively by daily output. We monetize our hobbies, we track our sleep for optimization, we constantly try to hack our biology to produce more.
It is exhausting.
It is. But this track gives us this incredible, radical directive. It says to arrive in the space where you don't have to produce.
Wow.
It acknowledges that, yes, society demands this rhythmic output, but it argues that if you don't have a space where your value is detached from your productivity, you will break. It's giving permission to step off that assembly line, particularly for minds that were never built for it in the first place.
That reframes things completely. And the lyrics go on to counter that pressure with a really profound kind of self-acceptance. It says, but inside here, the saddest screams a jagged tear in all your dreams. Allow jagged edges to soften.
Jagged edges.
Yeah, what do you think they mean by jagged edges in a psychological sense?
The jagged edges represent the friction we feel when we try to force ourselves into that relentless rhythm you mentioned earlier. It's the burnout, the sensory overload, the days where you just can't focus the way a neurotypical standard says you should.
Yeah.
When the source says, it's not a defect, it's not a choice, it's your spirit-finding voice, it is executing a massive cognitive reframe.
That is powerful. Because usually when we struggle to maintain that output, society tells us we are defective. We're told we're lazy or we just aren't trying hard enough.
Right. Hustle culture actively pathologizes rest and friction. But this piece argues that the friction you feel, those jagged edges, isn't a sign that you are broken. It's actually your spirit rebelling against an unnatural, mechanized way of living. It's your spirit finding its voice.
The lyrics actually say, love the jagged edges of something perfect. Which really feels like a plea to stop taking sandpaper to your own soul just so you can fit into the machinery.
That's a great way to put it.
And then it hits us with this line, stop the war, put the armor down, in this chaos the soul is found. Putting down the armor makes sense logically, but practically. That is a terrifying concept for most of us. We build that armor for a reason.
We do. We build the armor to survive the exact demands we were just talking about. The workplace politics, the social expectations, the constant masking of our true selves to appear productive and normal.
Yes, totally.
But carrying that armor requires an immense amount of psychological energy. It's exhausting. Energy that you spend holding up a shield is energy that is completely unavailable for healing, for joy, or for simply existing.
You're spending all your resources on defense.
Exactly. So when the source tells you to allow the resonance to hold you, it's inviting you to trust that you don't have to be rigid and defended at all times to be safe. You can arrive at a place where your true was always you, without the armor. It's asking you to consider the cost of your defenses.
It's a heavy realization to sit with. Just chewing on this contrast between society's demand for constant rhythmic output and this deep internal plea to find a home within yourself where you don't have to produce.
It's a lot to process.
It makes you realize how much time we spend trying to fix ourselves. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, because what happens when you do put the armor down or when you try to soften those jagged edges, but the internal chaos is just too overwhelming?
Right.
What happens when it's not just the outside world demanding output, but your own mind turning against you?
That brings us face to face with the reality of our third source.
Yes, we are pivoting to the final and undoubtedly the most intense track in this collection. It's called Chest Full of Thunder, a verse for the trapped soul.
It's so visceral.
If that first track was a gentle morning breeze, and the second was a quiet rebellion against the daily grind, this third track dives straight into the storm.
Yeah.
The physical metaphors for anxiety and trauma here are just staggering.
They really are.
The track starts, I feel it in my chest again, that tight fist closing in like the air forgot my name and the dark remembered it. The air forgot my name.
It grounds the poetic analysis in actionable psychological reality. Because when you experience severe anxiety or a trauma response, it is rarely just a cognitive event. It's not just having a bad thought.
No, it's a full-body experience.
It is an intensely physiological experience. The lyrics state, Pressure on my ribs, like trauma's trying to draw blood every inhale, feels like climbing out of a flash flood. The author is taking an invisible psychological struggle and rendering it with intense, undeniable physical weight.
It's so deeply relatable for anyone who has ever experienced a panic attack or severe anxiety, waking up inside a body that won't let me breathe. And then there are these striking comparisons. They describe asthma like a demon sitting heavy on my lungs, and trauma like a sermon that my body's never done.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, comparing trauma to a sermon is absolutely brilliant because it highlights the indoctrination of the nervous system.
Indoctrination. Wow.
The body isn't just passively remembering a bad event from the past, it's practically sitting in the pews, being preached to by its own threat response system over and over again until the body accepts that danger as an absolute present tense truth.
It's doctrine of panic. And the isolation that comes with carrying that doctrine inside you is so palpable in the text. You are trapped in this body reciting this terrifying sermon, and no one else can hear it.
Which is the hardest part.
The text says, in the shadows, say they know me, say they hold me, say let go. You don't need the old me, but I'm crawling with a chest full of thunder. It highlights that disconnect. People on the outside are offering these easy platitudes. Just let go, move on, practice mindfulness. But they don't understand that you are carrying a literal storm inside your ribcage.
And that profound isolation breeds a deep sense of hopelessness, which the lyrics capture perfectly in the next lines. They say, escape feels mythical, fictional, biblical, like freedom's just a rumor told by the cynical.
Such a powerful rhythm to those words.
Notice the claustrophobic rhyme scheme there. Mythical, fictional, biblical, cynical. It mimics the rapid, suffocating spiral of a panic attack. When you are in the depths of that kind of psychological pain, the very concept of freedom feels entirely fabricated. You are, as the text says, praying for rescue, but the echo answers slow, leaving you with just yourself in the shadows.
It's a very dark place to be. But this is exactly why this source material is so incredible, because we reach the climax of these lyrics and it transforms into one of the most triumphant expressions of resilience I've seen in a long time. It explores this incredible duality.
It really shifts gears.
Listen to this. I'm shatterproof, but I'm trembling on the edges, holding myself up by emotional stitches. That is such a real depiction of what survival actually looks like. You aren't unbroken. You are covered in emotional stitches. You are trembling, but you are shatterproof.
It completely redefines what strength means. Culturally, we often think of strength as being entirely unaffected by pain, like a solid stone wall that nothing can penetrate.
Yeah, the tough guy image.
Exactly. But these lyrics suggest that true resilience is highly fragile in its appearance. You can be incredibly close to breaking, your bones can feel brittle like the world's turned to toothpicks, but you still refuse to turn into a smoking ghost. You hold the stitches together.
I have to bring up the imagery in the final verses because the visuals are just stunning. The author says, the darkness want to swallow everything I own, but I'm still breathing fire from a collapsing throne.
Breathing fire from a collapsing throne.
Your whole internal kingdom is falling apart around you, and you are still fighting. And then, honestly, the absolute best line of the entire piece, if the path behind me turns to ruins, I rise from the wreck, there's a phoenix in the bruise.
Let's really pause on that metaphor because it is so deliberate. The author doesn't say a phoenix rising from the ashes, which is the traditional, almost cliche image we are used to. They say a phoenix in the bruise.
The bruise, right.
Ashes imply that you were completely destroyed, burned to absolutely nothing before you could be reborn. A bruise, however, implies living tissue.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It implies that you took a massive hit, it damaged you, it left a visible mark, but the tissue is still fundamentally alive. The magic, the rebirth, is happening right there in the site of the injury itself. I'd love to ask our listener directly, what stands out to you when you hear that?
It's a great question to ask.
How does it change your perspective on your own mental or physical pain to think that the injury itself contains the blueprint for your resilience?
It ends with this defiant realization that the pain itself is almost fueling the fight. This pain in my chest tries to keep me weak, but I burn even brighter when I can't breathe. It's incredible. The very thing trying to suffocate them is acting like an accelerant.
That is the ultimate paradox of trauma and survival presented in this text. The dark won't let them sleep, the fear runs deep, but the end result isn't defeat, it's a defiant statement. I'm still here, still breaking, still fighting, still rising.
Breaking and rising.
Notice how breaking and rising are happening at the exact same time. It dispels the myth that you have to be completely healed in order to move forward. You can be breaking and rising simultaneously.
So what does this all mean for us? If we synthesize the journey we've just been on today, it's a massive emotional arc. We started in that fragile liminal space of the morning, just trying to let peace wash over our cognitive clutter so we don't spike our cortisol before the day even begins. Then we moved out into a world demanding relentless robotic output. And we explored the radical idea of dropping our armor and realizing that our jagged edges aren't defects. And finally, we confronted the deepest, darkest thunders inside our own chests, the visceral reality of trauma and panic, and found that even when we are trembling on emotional stitches, there is a phoenix in our bruises.
The overarching takeaway for you listening right now is why this deeply personal exploration matters in a broader context. We live in an era of unprecedented information overload.
Definitely.
We are constantly learning about the external world, consuming data, news, and strategies. But sometimes the most crucial, vital knowledge you can ever acquire is a deep understanding of your own internal landscape.
Absolutely.
It's recognizing the physiological rhythm of your own panic, understanding the immense energetic cost of the armor you wear, and knowing that your refusal to conform to a machine-like existence is a sign of life, not a symptom of failure.
Exactly. Knowing that you are fundamentally allowed to arrive in a space where you don't have to produce. But as we wrap up, there's one specific lyric from Chest Full of Thunder that we purposely save for the very end, because it completely flips the script on how society usually talks about dealing with our pain.
This raises an important question, and it stems from a remarkably sharp observation in the text. The author writes, "Introspection's a knife that I carry on my spine. It cuts me open just to check if I'm alive."
That line is haunting. It cuts me open just to check if I'm alive. Think about that for a second. We are constantly told by modern culture, by social media, by the massive self-help industry, that introspection and endless self-analysis are the ultimate tools for healing.
We hear it everywhere.
We are encouraged to constantly dig into our pasts, process our traumas, and hyperanalyze every single emotion we have.
But based on this image, we have to ask ourselves a highly provocative question. Could our modern obsession with constantly digging into our own pain actually be the very thing keeping our wounds open? Introspection is described here not as a healing balm, but as a knife, a weapon we wield against ourselves. If we are constantly cutting ourselves open just to feel something, to check if we are still alive and still hurting, we never actually allow the emotional stitches to dissolve and the skin to heal.
I really want you to mull that over today. Look at your own habits. Are you using introspection to heal, or are you using it as a knife? What if true healing isn't always found in endlessly dissecting your mental static or your trauma? What if true healing is found in finally learning to put the knife down?
It is a profound thought to carry with you. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do for your own survival is to simply stop checking the wound.
Let that sit with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolute privilege to explore these incredible words with you, to unpack the cognitive clutter, and to look for the phoenix and the bruises together. Keep softening those jagged edges. Take a deep breath into the day, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Take care.